Welcome everyone to our monthly Zoom meeting. Um, we're doing this month is going to be on enforcement and the proper ways to do enforcement. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. One of the things I want to bring up on the screen is a document that is called Good to Great. And this is a document that is provided by CAI. I have it on the wrong screen. And there we go. So this is a document provided by CAI that talks about how to help associations enforce their CC&Rs properly. And so this particular document goes through some homeowners' rights and homeowners' responsibilities. It goes through board members' rights and board members' responsibilities, a little bit of code of ethics, and then community association fundamentals on just how associations should run. On the enforcement topic, I want to talk a little bit about the rights of a homeowner, and then we're going to talk about the rights of the board, which are the group that keeps the association running. So we want to be sure we're fair on both sides. So we're going to start with the homeowner's rights. And that would be that the homeowner has a responsibility to be competent with what the association is doing. They're going to have to participate in the association. They have certain things that they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be respectful of neighbors. They're supposed to at least know what the association rules are, so that they know what they are supposed to be doing, and they can live accordingly to those rules. They're gonna be accommodating to the neighbors. In realistic terms, the way I like to look at it is, you're going to be a good neighbor. So put your stuff away, keep your lawn looking nice, and there shouldn't be any real problems. As long as you're familiar with the covenants and what they read, which is the obligation that the homeowner has, so that they know what they can and can't do in the subdivision. There's a little bit of a loose term of interpretation of really what does that mean? What do these governing documents completely stipulate, like RV parking behind the fence, in a shed, in the garage, can't see from public view at all. Every association is going to be a little bit different, but there is some rule of thumbs that associations abide by. As long as homeowners know that they have the right to have items on their property, but they also have an obligation or responsibility to be accommodating to the written governing documents. As a platform, that's what the homeowners' rights are, is to have stuff on their property, and their responsibilities are to make sure it's in accordance with what the covenants read. Okay, now we'll jump down here to the board members. And the board members have certain, community leaders is what they're calling on this document, have certain rights also, and they also have certain responsibilities. The board members' rights are to be treated nicely by the residents. They're the ones volunteering their time to help the association run right. So they have this, they have the right to be treated correctly and to be supported by the homeowners in the community in their attempt to do things correctly. So we're not, and CAI is not suggesting that just because you become a board member, that the homeowners have to fall in suit and just do what you think as a board member is right. You have also the responsibilities to follow in accordance with the governing documents. So interpretation is something that the board members probably ought not get too involved in. Let's stick with what's written. And then if there is a need for interpretation, you're going to make an interpretation or a policy that's going to be written and always followed until it's changed by a different board. So there are responsibilities that the board members have to be in compliance with the governing documents, just like the homeowners are expected to do. So those are a couple of things in this document that I think is a fair thing to go over on the front end. So governance and guidelines is the section that we really want to focus on. And there's a number of things in here that talk about the entire association. The one that I want to focus on is number 12, down here at the bottom, and this is the rules. The rules are what the association has determined are expectations of homeowners in the community. So what does that mean? Well, that means that the association is going to enforce the rules as they're written in your CC&Rs, and that the board is going to make sure that they are equitable and fair and uniform and consistent, all kind of the same term. And that's what the document's stipulating, is that they're going to be fair in all the actions that the association takes. So when we talk about board members and making decisions on compliance issues, we jump right into some examples. The most common one is like landscaping, when you get a violation for your yard not looking correctly. And everyone's familiar with the Disney, I think it's a Disney movie, Over the Hedge, with the lady that runs out, your lawn's more than 4 inches tall with a ruler and she's busy getting in everybody's business. And that's not what the association is intended to do. The association and board members and the compliance committee or CC&R committee, whatever your community might call it, their intent is to go out and find the problems and address it in a positive manner to help the homeowner get it corrected. An example, I have a neighbor who lives across the street from me. I noticed that they just moved in. Their lawn is tremendously long. They haven't mowed it for 3 weeks now. And it's green, but it just hasn't been mowed. So I go over, and by the way, not referring to a board member, just a homeowner, went over and said, hey, you need some help mowing the lawn because I noticed your lawn hasn't been mowed. And in a friendly manner, we had this conversation about them moving in, and the movers, it was an older couple, the movers had unloaded all of their stuff, and then the lawnmower, riding lawnmower, was in the back of the garage behind all the boxes. His back was bad and he couldn't get the mower out. And we never know why someone's out of compliance with the CC&Rs, which is why the best way to do it is in a positive way first, is to find out what the situation is so that you can address it. So what ended up happening is I just brought my mower over and mowed it because there was a lot of boxes and I didn't want to move his stuff. So eventually, a week or so later, he got all the stuff out and riding his mower. And then to compound it, I noticed after a week or two that his lawn was dying, like it wasn't getting watered. So I went back over again and just friendly conversation, like, hey, it looks like you're having trouble with your sprinkler system. Something I can help you with? And he says, yes. I have a zone in the backyard. I've parked my RV behind the fence. And right where my slide out is, there's a sprinkler head that sprays right into the edge of my slide out, and I don't want to ruin my camper. So I just turned the whole sprinkler system off. Well, I was surprised. I'm like, well, I can help you fix that. So we went in his garage, adjusted his sprinkler clocks and turned that one zone off and turned everything back on again, and everything was fine. Another example is a homeowner at the very entrance of the subdivision, always kept their yard immaculate. And all of a sudden, one day in the middle of summer, the lawnmower is sitting by the front steps of the house and the lawn just goes to pots and no one can figure it out. And the board was going to send off some violation letters and send some nasty grams to the homeowner. And one person in the community said, has anybody stopped in to ask if there's any needs in the home? Sure enough, somebody went and knocked on the door. It's an elderly lady. Her husband had just passed away. He's the one that took care of the yard. No family in town. Mower sitting right there. All it needed was someone who was able to mow the lawn. So they had young kids in the community rotate and mow her lawn for the rest of the summer. It's those kind of things that we have to be really careful of, that we approach this compliance issue in a very soft and careful way. We don't want to give people the wrong impression of what the compliance component of the association is. And it's not to watch over people and irritate them. It's really designed to be sure we help homeowners stay in compliance. If there's a problem, we ought to be neighborly and go and assist. Now, let's talk about the other side of the coin. Let's talk about the guy who moves into the community, I don't care what you say. This is my property. Back off. I pay for it. I pay the taxes. You just leave me alone and I'm going to do what I want. He has a dead horse in the front yard. He's got, 3 campers in the backyard that are plugged into the house. People are living in them. They have parties all night. I mean, you get all the bad examples and throw them out there. And that's an exact contrast to what I was just referring to. Now, this individual who's got the dead horse in his front yard and all the trailers, he is willfully being non-compliant. And if you were to go to his house and say, hey, see, there's a problem, you got a dead horse, you need help, and he's the one that's going to tell you to take a long walk on a short bridge and give you some instructions on where you ought to be, that's where your compliance component comes into play. Okay. 2 ways the compliance component comes into play is when you know some property is out of compliance and there is no hope for being cordial and nice, that's when you want to send out compliance letters. Okay. And address the issue based on what your covenants read. You don't want to send out letters that say, we feel like you should and we think you ought to. Don't give anybody the corrective measure. Just tell them what they're not in compliance with in the covenants. And if possible, and highly recommended, use the words and the verbiage from that section of the covenants that you're making reference for. If you're in front of a judge and you say, Your Honor, we are expecting Mike to get the dead horse out of his front yard because, and you're going to give a section of the CC&Rs that says no dead horses allowed on Thursdays or whatever your covenants read. That's the document section that you want to quote in the letter that you're sending to a homeowner for noncompliance. It is not recommended that you tell them how to fix the problem because that you don't have authority on. You just tell them what they're non-compliant for. A recreational vehicle needs to be screened from public view. Don't tell them to put a fence up. Don't tell them to go get a storage unit. Don't tell them anything on how to fix it. And there's a reason I say that. You're just identifying the non-compliant issue of the property. And in the notes of that, you want to be specific. You have a stored vehicle in the driveway. It's the red one up on blocks with no wheels. License plate, blah, 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 blah. Quote the section of the CC&Rs that says no stored vehicles in public view or whatever your covenants read, and send that compliance notice to them. Now, you're going to want to have a very good, clean compliance sequence or compliance, non-compliance process written out for how you as an association treat non-compliance properties. And what I mean by that is I'll put up on the screen here a copy of one that we recommend is used for some of our clients. In fact, most of our clients, and a number of our clients will change this process so that it's not 3 friendly reminders. And that all depends on how frequently you're doing inspections. And we recommend once a month because the problemed property, the guy who has the dead horse with all the trailers in the front yard, you don't have to wait month to month to proceed with his process. You just need to go once a month to check to see if there's new issues that haven't already been identified by a homeowner. So this sequence here is going to send us a friendly reminder to the guy with the dead horse, maybe a second one, and then you can jump to a certified demand and then send it off to the attorney for litigation. But you would only skip your process if you know that this guy's not going to be compliant. But as a rule of thumb, the lawn who's looks like it's not going well, or you're unable to go over and visit someone at the door, you'll want to use these sequences for sending out letters so that the 3 friendly reminders gives people an opportunity to respond. And we base this off a monthly compliance inspection, and these are new items that are popping up, and you're going to use that sequence for three consecutive letters. I make reference to going and visiting at the door. I want to be very clear that we're not recommending that the board members show up at anyone's front door, because I think that's a pretty bad idea. The only time someone would show up at the door is if there's a neighbor that's willing to go over and talk to them, or if you have an entire committee, 2 or 3 people who show up. Keep it from the he said, she said. If the committee shows up, it's we're here to help. Here's what we've noticed and we would like to help you if it's possible. if the committee shows up and says, we're here to tell you you're out of compliance, this is what you need to fix, and then turns around to leave, that approach isn't going to foster positive feelings or a good culture, and will cause more problems than it's worth. Do not do it that way. Resort back to letters. If you do have a group of homeowners who have a skill set that can help with sprinkler clocks or landscaping, that kind of stuff, then maybe send them out. But be sure that they can control the presentation of how they're giving the message. That committee should not be there to notify people they're out of compliance. That committee, if they're going to do that, should be there to facilitate help. We're here to help. What would you like us to do to help you? If they are not able to do that, you need to resort to the letters being sent and keep it with the mailman making the delivery, because most people won't beat the mailman up for delivering that kind of a notice to them. Okay. So let's go back to this document. So this is HOA enforcement guidelines. So when your association comes up with a guideline on how to enforce their CC&Rs, these are the kind of things this, and I'll put this document up on our website for you to download and have, but it kind of goes through some assistance in helping you guys, the board, develop a compliance process, and gives you some ideas on what you can do, some things to stay away from, and encouraging things that you can look at. But the recap of this document is right here. And it basically says, board members, read your CC&Rs and homeowners, put your stuff away, and keep your yard looking presentable. And presentable becomes the interpretation, right? I mean, I don't think anybody's expecting someone to mow their lawn every 6 days or every 7 days. But certainly if someone waits 14 days, that's going to look kind of bad. So there's some give and take on what the compliance issues ought to be. And again, I think the biggest thing is the presentation of how the notification is given to the homeowner. You can't limit, it's mail obviously, but the way your letter reads is very important. The one that we recommend use is the one that MGM uses. Basically towards the end it says, if you find this letter to be inaccurate information, we apologize. The association is doing its best to keep the properties looking nice. Basically is what it says at the end. But it's very clear that your property is out of compliance, what the section of the covenants is that we deem you to be out of compliance for, and a little note if it needs to be detailed exactly what stored vehicle they're referring to. So just be sure that it's consistent. Be sure that you're being fair on all of the homeowners who are found to be non-compliant. Now, we have the issue with if a property is out of compliant, what do you do if someone won't fix it? Well, issue them a fine, send them to court, sue them, however you want to present that. So the state of Idaho passed some legislation a few years ago that says that the association, if they want to assess a fine, that they have to give the homeowner written notice by certified mail 30 days in advance of a hearing where the non-compliance topic will be discussed and the board members are present. So when Mike has a dead horse in his front yard on January 1st, we have to send Mike a notice January 1 about a hearing that happens no less than 30 days in advance. So 35, 45 days in advance, where I get to come to the meeting and say, hey board, the reason I have a dead horse in the front yard is, and I lay out the reasons why I am unable to get the dead horse out of my front yard. And if the board deems that that's understandable and that story tugs at their heartstrings or whatever the situation is, they can say, we're not going to issue a fine. We're going to give you another 30 days or 10 days or whatever to get the problem fixed. Okay. That's, I think, what the legislation was looking to do. What ends up happening is there's a 30-day notice mailed to Mike telling him his dead horse is in the front yard. If I show up to the hearing, I'm probably going to be a little bit combative. I don't understand why it always seems to be that way, but if I'm playing the game to keep the association from processing forward with the fines, the legislation says that if Mike makes any correction during that 30-day lead up to the meeting to try to fix the problem, then the association has to start over again and give me another 30 days. So if I drag the dead horse halfway out of the yard, they deem that as attempting to get it fixed, and so they're going to have to start that 30-day notice again. That legislation needs cleaned up. But nonetheless, it's designed to keep associations from issuing fines uncontrolled and trying to make money off of people who are out of compliance. And I agree with that ideology. That should not be the purpose ever for the association to issue fines for the purpose of making money. The fine should encourage Mike to fix the problem, because the pain of the fine is more than the pain of fixing the dead horse in the front yard. That's what the intent of the fine is. Now, that whole legislation thing has gotten a little more progressive. Now some places say that even the attorney's fees are considered fines, and so they won't engage the attorney until after they sent the 30-day hearing notice. The whole intent now is to avoid any loophole that the homeowner could use to throw out the case because of some technicality of the hearing not being held 30 days before the association issued the fine of the attorney's fee. The process ought to be followed. The friendly reminder is a certified demand that would tell you of the hearing, and then off to the attorney or whatever venue you're going to use for getting the compliance rectified. Give the homeowner 30 days notice, have the hearing, make it available for them to have their side of the story heard, and then proceed from there based on what the board feels is appropriate. Always be fair. Always be willing to help the homeowner correct the problem. That is the purpose. That is the purpose of the compliance committee or the board, is to help people identify that there is a problem and then help them figure out what's the best manner to get it fixed. Never telling them how to do it, but if they say, I need 10 more days, give them 10 more days to get the problem solved. 10 days compared to $800 in fees and fines and attorneys and hearings you got to attend. And then at your board meeting, you got to go through this whole legal case to decide what your next step is. Sometimes being understanding and neighborly is the phrase I want to focus on, is better than the hard hammer of get it done, or we're going to fine you and make it painful for you. Okay. So that's the gist of the compliance side. Is the association's intent is to make sure that grandma's property next door to Mike's house is protected from Mike acting like a moron and having a dead horse in his front yard and trailers and all kinds of garbage out there. And that's an expectation that grandma should have, is that the association is going to keep that from happening because it's written in the governing documents. So if the board turns a blind eye to Mike's chunky yard, then grandma has legitimate concern to address the association for why they're not keeping the covenants enforced. So two sides to that. The association has an obligation to enforce the CC&Rs, and it also has a responsibility to make sure that they're being positive and accommodating for homeowners. And what we'll do at this point is I'm going to put these documents up online with this video. And if you want to review those or download those, you can hit the link and download those pictures. So with that, I appreciate everybody coming and watching the video. And if there's any other questions, feel free to give our office a call. It's gomgm.com, which I'm sure you know because you already hit that website to hit this link, or give our office a call and an email. We'd love to review the opportunity to have you as a client. And with that, I thank you for being here.